Hey guys, it's Emma here and welcome back to my channel. So on March 8th it was International Women's Rights Day, which means by rights the whole month of March is International Women's Month. And so in honour of this I thought I would do a quick little video talking about 12 female photographers that you should absolutely know about. Now this is just my personal list. There are a few other photographers that are not mentioned, however I am planning on doing another video like this in the future. So if you do want to comment below another artist that inspires you, just let me know and I will be doing another video in the future mentioning more. There's quite a bit of variety in this list, so some are very famous, some are less known, some are fairly modern, others were at the peak of their careers in the 20th century, others were around when photography was just starting to take off. Also, if you're wondering what that noise is, it is chucking it down with rain outside, so I'm sorry if you can hear that in the background. Without further ado, these are 12 female photographers you need to know. Number 1. Annie Leibowitz. So kicking this list off with one of the most well-known and celebrated female photographers of the past 5 decades. Annie Leibowitz is a commercial, editorial, fashion, portrait, journalist, photographer. She pretty much does anything and is not limited to certain labels and genres within the photography industry. She has said so herself that she would like to break down the walls of what defines a photographer by their trade, which is exactly what she's done. Leibowitz's career began when she became a photographer for Rolling Stone magazine. She then went on to work for Vogue, Vanity Fair, photographing everyone from the Rolling Stones to Meryl Streep, John Lennon, Whoopi Goldberg, politicians, actors, musicians, writers, poets. Leibowitz has basically photographed anyone who's anyone, which is why she is so highly respected, and to do all of that and have such an amazing varied career whilst being a woman in the industry is really inspiring. Now of course her work isn't everyone's cup of tea, but I personally really like her and I really admire her work and her style, particularly her lighting style. Mine has been influenced by that over the years. But she's definitely up there for me in terms of inspiring female creatives. So yeah, if you haven't seen her work already, you would probably recognise more than one image that she's done. Number 2. Vivian Maier. Vivian Maier is a little different from some of the other figures on this list because she wasn't actually a photographer by trade, she was a nanny. The American-born street photographer of French and Austrian descent, Maier worked for about 40 years as a nanny, mainly in the Chicago area. She would babysit the children of wealthy families and then in her spare time she would constantly be taking pictures. And these aren't just little snapshots of street scenes either, this was a very clever and skilled photographer. She was a genius with the camera. Even her self-portraits are very, very clever in their setup. She had an amazing, fantastic eye, and her work wasn't discovered until after her passing. Not long after she died in 2009, several boxes and crates of film rolls were discovered. And as the attention grew, suddenly Vivian Maier's name was everywhere. Everyone wanted to know who this mysterious, enigmatic character was. I'm personally inspired by her self-portraits. Whenever I take my film camera out, I usually get a self-portrait in a window or a reflection or mirror of some sort. She was incredibly clever and talented, and I wonder what she would have made of all the fuss around her work today. Number 3. Dickey Chapelle. When we tend to think of war photographers, we usually always think of a male photographer. But that of course was not the case with Dickey Chapelle, among many other women who photographed the Vietnam War. The American photojournalist also corresponded during World War II, but it is her work in Vietnam that she is mostly known for. This is a woman that was so fearless and determined, and she fought to share the experiences going on during those times. Her work is incredibly honest and raw, and she had a fantastic eye for composition. Tragically, the Vietnam War would ultimately claim her life, as in 1965 the group that she was travelling with hit a booby trap and she was struck in the neck by a piece of shrapnel. She bled to death soon afterwards, and her death was captured by another photographer. I won't put the image here out of respect, however I have no control over what you choose to search. Because of this, she became the first female war correspondent to be killed in Vietnam, as well as the first American female photographer to be killed in action. She should definitely be researched and remembered and celebrated, not just for her bravery, but her desire and drive to share what was going on from across the other side of the world at that time. Number 4. Francesca Woodman. another photographer who sadly didn't get the publicity she deserved until after her death. Working mostly with self-portraits, Woodman was an incredibly talented, creative and imaginative individual. Her work is often highly experimental, often minimalist or surrealist, and is definitely seen as a catharsis for her. But it wasn't just self-portraits she was limited to. Many of her other photographs show women either fully clothed or without clothing, their faces hidden or blurred, some of them just shadows. Woodman sadly committed suicide in 1981 at the age of just 22. You can see influences and hints of her work anywhere. For example, if you just look on Instagram, there are self-portraits and other experimental photographs that emulate her style. Another less well-known photographer, but one that is definitely worth a research. Number 5. Cindy Sherman. Okay, so if you're like me and you do a lot of self-portraiture, you should be familiar with the name Cindy Sherman. She is truly one of the most influential and iconic photographers of the past few decades. The way she mixes theatre and performance with her self-portraits is so mesmerising and fascinating. There are wigs and makeup and costumes, and it's amazing to see just how much work she puts into her photographs and how much effort and just the little tiny details that you wouldn't even think of. Also, the woman is a chameleon. In every photograph she looks different, and I really love that because there's a story to each image. Sherman plays a lot with visual narrative. Her most famous work is Untitled Film Stills, and each one of these female characters has a story behind them, and you begin to construct a narrative of your own. A few of the images in particular are very Alfred Hitchcock-esque, which definitely appeals to me. Her work often explores the role of women in society, how they're presented on film, gender roles, stereotypes, so on and so forth. She's a really fascinating woman, and you'll be amazed at just how different she can look in each image. Number 6. Dorothea Lange. If you haven't heard of this name, then you will most likely know one famous photograph that she took, that being Migrant Mother. Taken during the American Depression in the 1930s, this image became a symbol of poverty, oppression, and pain and suffering for so many. But it's not just Migrant Mother that she's known for. Lange's techniques separated her from a lot of other photojournalists at the time. For example, she employed dramatic angles and compositions, an excellent use of shadow, that often made for very uncomfortable and jarring viewing. You can tell that she was incredibly passionate about her social and political views, as she had a keen interest in them long before she became a photographer. Looking at her photographs, it is evident that Lange had a burning desire to help bring about social change. I do believe that without Lange's photojournalism, the effects of this time wouldn't be as widely known. Number 7. Diane Arbus. Another icon from the 20th century, she started her photographic career assisting her husband with works for Vogue and other editorial magazines, but she soon realised that the glamorous world of the elite it wasn't for her. She couldn't do it anymore. She was instead drawn to the freaks and misfits and lesser known individuals on the margins of society. Some of her most notable works include The Identical Twins in New Jersey, Child with Toy Hand Grenade, and A Young Man in Curlers. It was clear that the camera was more than just an instrument to Arbus. It was a way of her releasing herself and expressing herself. It was a catharsis for her. She was truly an incredibly strange and eccentric character, and there have been entire videos and documentaries on her life. She was a very enigmatic artist and definitely proves the phrase, "The truth is stranger than fiction." Number 8. Nan Goldin. Upon first glance, Nan Goldin's images may appear as simple snapshots, but when you take a closer look, you'll see they're actually works of art. You're looking at a slice of life, and you feel pulled into another world. You feel like you're there in the moment when you're looking at them. The photographs show everything from sexuality to drug use, to the gay subcultures and LGBT communities, domestic violence as well. There is one picture she took of herself after being beaten by her partner, and there is nothing sugar-coated about that. It is just there. There is domestic abuse. Probably her most iconic body of work is The Ballad of Sexual Dependency, an ongoing project from the 1970s, 80s and 90s. The Ballad of Sexual Dependency is a deeply personal visual narrative and is formed out of the artist's own experiences. It covers everything from sex and drug use to violence, joy and sadness, the devastating effects of AIDS. You really are looking into the past and looking at a slice of life from someone else. Number 9, Sally Mann. Okay, this one is a bit controversial, but just bear with me. Sally Mann shoots using a large format camera and employs the collodion process to her work. This is a technique from the 19th century where a photographic emulsion is smeared onto a glass plate a few minutes before it's exposed. This is what gives Mann's photographs this dreamy, otherworldly, almost timeless feel to them. The rich contrast and shadows and blurring, just all of it is just so wonderful, it's almost seductive. Which is what brings us to the controversial bit. So a lot of Mann's earlier photographs featured her children, often family vacations to the lakes, her children doing things that children do, you know, running around naked, swimming, so on and so forth. But that obviously raises an issue of consent and how far do you go with documenting your family life. Again, you could do a whole other video on this, and I'm not going to, at least not yet. But the controversial aspect aside, her other images are absolutely stunning. This is also a photographic process I would really love to try out at some point. So if you're looking for something really visually interesting and thought-provoking as well as dreamy and visually, aesthetically unique, I definitely recommend looking at Sally Mann's work. Number 10, Sanella Mahoney. I have probably butchered that name and I'm really sorry. Mahoney is a South African visual activist and artist. To say that her images are gorgeous would be a gross understatement. Working in black and white, Mahoney's work focuses on gender, sexuality, race, what it means to be a black lesbian or to be gay and black, transgender, and the images are just so beautiful and powerful. They're almost like something from a fever dream. It's just so strange looking at these images, but they're hypnotic, you can't look away. Her work is often used as a tool to subvert the stereotypical representations of African Americans. Through her work, she aims to dismantle these perceptions and misconceptions of the people she chooses to photograph. And they're incredibly important now, so more than ever, because they're giving a face and a voice to the black queer identity. She's a fantastic artist and definitely lesser known than some of the other women on this list, which is why I'm mentioning her, because she deserves the attention. Number 11, Gertrude Kaiserbier. Again, I really hope I'm not butchering that pronunciation, but this is a very important figure in the photography industry in general, not just for women. She was best known for her images of motherhood, along with her powerful portraits of Native Americans. She also promoted photography as a career for women, and so was a pioneer in that respect. It was during the late 1800s that Gertrude began her photography career. Her work was often seen as evocative. Her images of motherhood and domestic scenes give us a glimpse into life at that time. The images are almost haunting, there's just this strange otherworldly element to them. Considered a pictorialist, she also often manipulated her photographs in order to fit her artistic intentions. Gertrude Kaiserbier is such an important and pivotal figure in the photographic industry, not just in general but for women especially. Number 12, Julia Margaret Cameron. This British artist's photographic career only spanned 11 years of her life. But at the time, she became known for photographing the celebrities of that era. She also started her career pretty late, at 48 years old, when her daughter gave her a camera as a gift. Within a year of that, Cameron was already a member of the Photographic Societies of London and Scotland. She remained a member until her death. It was also clear that she was influenced by the pre-Raphaelite artists movement. The faraway looks, soft lighting, dramatic yet soft posing. In the photographic industry at that time, it was considered very much a man's world and a man's business. So for women such as Julia Margaret Cameron to invade and completely take over, that is a huge deal. Without women such as Julia Margaret Cameron and the likes of other amazing artists that have been mentioned in this list, we would probably not be where we are today as women in the art world. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this list. I know that there are a lot of other names I could have mentioned, but as I said before, I am planning on doing this again. There are also a few individuals mentioned on this list and not mentioned on this list that I would like to do whole videos about. I would also like to do a few videos imitating their technical process. So all in all, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I will be back next week with another video celebrating International Women's Month. This time I'll be recreating iconic photos taken by women, so stay tuned for that. But if you guys enjoyed, you can leave a like and subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. I will leave the links in the description down below. And with that being said, I will see you guys next week with another video. Bye!